presentamos todos, ¿no? Bueno.
Sí, presentamos todos. Sí. ¿Presentamos todos?
Sí, ¿no?
Ok. Ay, perdón.
Peter, would you like to join us at the table? Just to
No, I think
Sorry.
es más fácil que él se vea.
Sí.
I'm happy to
Okay.
whatever you prefer.
Ya.
As you wish.
In English.
Yo creo que en English, so everybody understands English.
Because if not, you wouldn't understand, no? You don't understand Spanish if I speak.
I wish I did.
Okay, yeah,
But I
because
could
if
use
not,
an
no?
AI app to have it translated.
Okay.
Not this.
We'll give it to you. Well, it was amazing, and thank you very much for your conference. It is really, really, a big experience to have heard it. And I feel not so bad now. You know, I'm an international group, and they are doing all and very excited about machine learning and really going through a lot of literature. And I was saying, well, okay, and what will it give us? Well, a lot of literature. It will be 2,000 articles or chapters, and that will be great. And I said, but what are we looking for? And then I was suspecting that I would prefer to have my 25 good literature, but I know exactly where they are coming from and that I can go deep into it. And I thought, there's a generation gap that I am really not into, so excited about machine learning experience. But now I think, no, it has a positive thing and also a negative thing, no? Because who is controlling the literature? What literature are we looking for? Which are the books or the articles that are into there and not the other ones? And in Latin America, we have been fighting for it, no, in the sense of not only like that Amazon is citing our works or academia or no, so Redalic, no, that it's in Latin America one of the best consortia, no, of magazines, of books that are giving us no other type of literature. And so, well, so it's not only a generation gap. Well, I will focus only in 3 aspects that I think they will be very important to consider in what I work. It is about small agriculture or family agriculture. And what I was thinking about, what I read about your articles, and it was, eco-business can solve sustainability, and now you said it again, that we forget about other alternatives. And I think that is really dangerous and high risk. And I think that now all this smart agriculture is really taking a lot of power, at least in this course. And then, of course, when I said that we forget about other alternatives, will be, well, then this agroecology, no, we can laugh about it because it will be like, it needs so much time, it needs so much labor, it needs so much, really like political consortia that it is almost, a very difficult thing to go through. So, and that we are creating big expectations about it, but perhaps then, a phase to the big smart agriculture, then it wouldn't be no way or no future. But when we start to think about it, then it's where is the control of the seeds, where is the control of the fertilizers, and then we will say, well, of course, all this machine, even for industrial agriculture, the seeds have to be perfect, the perfect size, the perfect form, And when we come with the peasants and they are selecting their own seeds, and well, there are one big ones and then are red, and there are other ones that are a little bit fat, and well, then it's the heterogeneity that it's the characteristic of agriculture, ecology. So in this sense, every time we need, in order to nourish, the smart agriculture, then we have to forget about our seeds, forget the other alternatives of fertilizers, and then more and more the control is over the big companies. And I think that for agriculture it is a big, big menace. The other point it was about the eco-business gives the way to go. This is the only way that we can follow, no? And I think that when it comes also to small farmers, it becomes a great problem. And I will only put like 2 examples. For example, Nestlé, no, that since 25 years ago, they started with all the production of organic coffee or organic cocoa. And then afterwards, of course, it was all the fair trade that it was developed. And we could say, yeah, it was a great thing. It was fair prices for small agriculture, for small farmers. But then we start to think, who puts all the conditions of even the organic coffee? And if really our small farmers are obliged to follow, but all the requirements that they have to put into it. And then afterwards, who is controlling fair trade? No, because at the beginning it was Max Havelaar, in Europe, and it was a great thing about Max Havelaar. But now we know about all the consequences and the control of Max Havelaar. So if you are not having the signature and the certification of Max Havelaar, you are losing a lot of market and a lot of prices. So then one thing that we thought at the beginning that it was great, that it was the fair trade, now we are seeing that it's more constraining and it has put much more limits to the small agriculture or to the small farmers, and they have to be really in the career or in a very quick pace to follow, in order to fulfill all the requirements of Nestlé organic coffee, organic cocoa. And the other point that that you came to in these conclusions, about, of course, all these great powers and giving more power to the companies that are completely minimizing the risks and dangers. Sometimes because we are only like putting an emphasis in the big possibilities or that we are recognizing the big benefits, we are always minimizing the risk and dangers. And I don't think that only for weapons that it is a terrible thing, but also in the sense of that we are not recognizing that more and more sustainability is put into the hands of the eco-business or of the big companies. And then, of course, there is a demobilization of society, because if we are always thinking that technology will be solving the most important problems of sustainability, then there is a kind of demobilization, and it's a social saying of, well, if technology is going to solve it, then what is the case of the social movements fighting for other alternatives for our planet? And then we have to think quite a lot of that. Thank you very much, and thank you for your inspiring conference.
Alonso.
Okay.
¿Sí?
Sí,
Okay.
gracias. In English, ¿verdad?
In English.
Okay, no problem.
But English universal language.
It's okay.
Bueno, el tuyo es bueno.
Okay. First of all, thanks very much for the commission for inviting me to be here to share some thoughts. Thanks to Peter for these very insightful ideas that make me remind me of debate that took place many years ago about the globalization dangers, maybe about 20 years ago. I remember there was a very strong debate on the dangers of globalization. And I remember a book from Peter from Krugman, who was trying to convince people that globalization was not the problem. It is more a problem of governance, and this fact is important because with these new ideas about the artificial intelligence that Peter has brought in, it makes me think about that the big problem is about, on the one hand, governance, and we have to understand governance as like a triangle where the government, citizens, and big corporations are intertwined, because there is no point in blaming one of the sides of the triangle. It's not a point blaming big corporations or the government, because this is a very complex issue that has to be solved from the three parts of it. On the other hand, there is the cost of technology transfer. I guess that a very deep problem is how much does it cost to bring transfer to emerging countries like Mexico, for example. I guess that's a big issue, because artificial intelligence is a further step of technological progress that humanity has used for millennia, and the very big problem is still, as I said, governance and the cost of transfer. Because guess that how to manage who can use or not this technology is the key issue. Peter told us very clearly that artificial intelligence can be used for the good or for the bad and on environmental problems, and it is for us humans to have a strong governance institutions that help us to lead the right ways how to use that technology. Well, just a final word I want to address is about something that Peter also talked about, is about consumerism. Because the role of consumers has a big role in decision making for sustainability problems. Many management instruments for environmental problems have been focused rather on the production side and less for the consumers. And as Peter told us, e-waste, but not just e-waste, but plastic also, it's increasing, and it's a result of how are we consuming and how are we behaving towards the consequences of our choices. I guess that's what I wanted to say right now. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Alonso. Simone.
Well, thank you, Peter, for your presentation. I'm going to just give a little bit of context of, I guess, why you were invited here, because now it's been 3 years since we started a seminar on, we call it at the beginning, governance, but that word doesn't match to the head of the university, so we had...
In fact, our rector told us that he didn't understand what governance meant, and if he didn't understand, the people wouldn't understand, so we had to be more clear.
So we started 3 years ago. We started a seminar that was basically guided by Leticia, and we had to sort of talk all the problems we had here in Mexico. And at the beginning we didn't know, but at the end we turned out to present all the problems in Mexico to the candidates for the presidential campaign last year. So I think that we are very aware, and I say as people who live here in Mexico and another part of the world, whatever you want to call it, development world, or of the problems and the dark sides of all those issues about sustainability and big corporation managing. So I really appreciated the book that is that we focus on about big business, big corporations. And on the introduction, I wanted to just decide and read what I think I really see inform your work. And I think it's very important because it's not very often that you can see that kind of clear statement. You say, for me, sustainability is the quality of advancing social justice without irreparably degrading ecosystems or harming future life. And I do not see this as a condition the world will one day attain, but rather an ideal that political systems need to strive for constantly, like those of liberty, freedom, and justice. So I want to just ask you, what, in your opinion, based on this statement, what do you see here now that you are, it's not your first time, but now that you are here in Mexico, and I'd like to have a little conversation about that, about all those sides, all the dark sides, the consequences that we see on first hand. We just not here, only here in Mexico. The news that 2 days ago, in Brazil, another activist was killed. And during these 3 years, we talked a lot about that, about mining, agriculture, water. So all those issues were very strong issues here. And I say that because reading your book, I read another part of another statement of yours was about, well, the positive consequences of, let's say, you say there is some evidence of traditional mining, timber, and agri-food companies offering more benefits to communities in developing countries, such as funding schools and medical clinics. Which is, I mean, we know that, but we also know that there are a lot of more difficulties that we are aware. So I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to I think after all these years, invite Leticia also to give 2 words, yes, about that, and to just connect, and invite you all to the next conference that she is now organizing with the Earth System Governance and UNAM. So thank you for your your presentation, and I'd like to pass.
And I would like to have a quick question for Peter. I mean, abusing of my use of the microphone. I was told, like 2 months ago in Colombia, in Cali, we had a meeting on Latin American, the ODS or something like. And the rector of the University of Los Andes, who was chairing the meeting, told us in the beginning, I mean, we know there's a lot of problems and a lot of things to denounce in Latin America, a lot of social movements against injustice, and the impacts of big corporations are, I mean, a powerful comparison, are as destructive and violent as the invasion to the Americas 500 years ago. I was like, gosh. I mean, by the way, more gold has been extracted from Mexico in the last 15 years than in the whole 300 years of the colony. I mean, that's the amount of the shadows of consumption in these areas, in these regions of the world. But he was saying, with the long story of revolution and struggle that our continent has, he said, what I think we need in order to be revolutionary at this stage in our region, we need to be able to build hope, to build pathways for transformation, pathways, I mean, being positive and being realistic, pathways for exchange. At the same time, I want to I mean, it comes to my mind that for the last 4 days, I was in an indigenous region in Mexico, in the Sierra in Oaxaca, where they have sustainable forest logging and community governance and many pros. And they have been fighting a mining concession for the last 15 years. I mean, the whole community, it's like 5,000 hectares, very rich in gold, have been concessioned to a mining company, Canadian corporation, without consent of the people. And after 15 years of fight, I mean, last week, they won the battle in the Supreme Court of the nation. So it's like, So I mean, trying to be positive, which could be some pathways for change that comes to your mind for the regions, for these regions of the world where the shadows of consumption, which are everywhere, but are even harder, and the shadows of artificial intelligence will be more unemployment. I mean, inequality. I mean, Latin America is the most unequal region of the world with the longest colonial history. So that's it. So it's do you want to answer? There are other questions. I think it's important for our audience to take part. Yeah.
Leticia, you stay up. You should stay up here. Yeah. I'll just sit right back here.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Thank you for your conference, and thank you for yours.
A ver, si quieren en español yo le puedo traducir, si es más fácil para
Okay.
que sea más cómodo.
Bueno, tengo la pregunta en
Nada más
inglés.
despacito. Y fuerte.
How sustainable development and artificial intelligence can work together, in specific in Mexico?
¿Otras preguntas?
How do you think about the link between artificial intelligence and programmed obsolescence? You don't talk about this term in your exposition, and maybe I need some light about that.
Okay.
This is the first question. The second question is, how do you think about the health potential impacts for 5G? For 5G, la tecnología 5G, for 5G technology, in terms of iPhones. Okay?
In terms of 5G, in terms of health, did you say?
Yes, in terms of health effects, of health impact. Okay?
Yep. I may need a pen. I've got a paper. Okay, I can write on this.
Okay, I just want to be very quick on my question. I think that I couldn't agree more with what you said on your presentation, and I was very fascinated of all of your insights. So I would like to thank you for sharing everything. And I don't know, I think that your statement on that we have to fight big businesses and militarized states is like one of the biggest targets that we have to work on. But my big question and my big concern is, how can we do that when we live in a society that lacks such a big trust on institutions and governments? And I think that my generation has a lot of lack of trust on even without within us, you know, we lack trust in governments, we lack trust of institutions and the UN, for example. So how can we work towards better frames of, like, ethical frames when we have such a pessimistic society?
Thank you.
Felicitaciones por estar hablando y entendiendo y reflexionando sobre este interesante y necesario tema. Yo tengo una pregunta, además de la acción, movilización y de no perder la esperanza que mencionan las maestras, ¿cómo concretamente podríamos obtener un instrumento tan caro, ¿sí?, sin tener nosotros las posibilidades económicas y la fuerza de una agrupación que pudiera verdaderamente mantenernos continuamente en esa tarea?
Thank you.
How can we fight?
How can we fight? Yeah.
Or acquire powerful
Got it.
technology when we lack the resources and we lack the cohesion, the organization?
My question is a little bit as the two questions before. Can AEE be an instrument for local government? Or does it work against local participation?
This is AI specifically? That's a very interesting question.
Perdón, yo quisiera hacer una última, bueno, no sé si sea la última, pero una pregunta también. ¿Qué potencial hay por parte de los movimientos sociales o por parte del público en general de contribuir en el desarrollo y el uso de herramientas, por ejemplo, de software libres, de este tipo de herramientas que pueden también ser una respuesta, aunque no tienen todos los recursos y el potencial de las grandes empresas? En términos de transparencia de información, no sé, que en algún momento dijo Wikileaks, con todas sus consecuencias legales, de desarrollo, como sea, de software libres, y en qué manera como instituciones las universidades podemos ser parte, ¿no?, de ese desarrollo tecnológico a favor de los otros, ¿no?, de las empresas o las corporaciones internacionales.
Good. Excellent.
Thank you. My question is, what is it better to question artificial intelligence for sustainability or sustainability for artificial intelligence? I didn't get the question. And would you please tell us some ideas about how to democratize artificial intelligence? Because yes, I would like to hear to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Okay. Another book. Yeah, no, wonderful questions. And thank you all for your feedback and your comments. Very insightful, very thoughtful, and it's always challenging to have such a diverse array of thoughtful and interesting questions. And many people raised very, very important points. Just to clarify, what this current book is trying to do is tries to understand the potential consequences of artificial intelligence for sustainability. So that's what I started off with, is the big overarching question, and then tried to see spaces and places where I saw hope and I saw positive change, and then places where I saw risks, limits, and dangers. So that's how it. And then the overarching argument as a whole is that we this isn't going to go away, and there's ways that we can make this work for our advantage, no question. But we can't get too caught up in the hype and too caught up in the and the ability to business to control the discourse and the narrative, right? And so we need to actually fight back with some uses for this technology. So that's the idea. A number of your questions made me realize that I can expand a little bit on what I didn't say in my talk around the way you might be able to democratize this technology, or the ways this technology could empower communities. It could empower conservation groups. It could empower activists. Because one of the things that's very interesting about this technology is, yes, it's under the control of the world's most powerful technology companies, and the ability to innovate in it is in the hands of a very, very small number of people, because it's extremely technically difficult to do, right? So those people are very well paid, and they tend to work at the biggest companies. However, there's also lots of potential for community groups, for activists, particularly scientifically oriented conservationists, to use the free software, to use the libraries that some of the companies have made available to us. That includes some of these big technology companies. So one of the interesting things is Microsoft and Google have both tried to offer community groups opportunities and even provided some funding. So Microsoft has something called AI for Earth, and they actually provide seed financing for universities to work on innovative ways to apply AI technologies, and they've been funding all around the world different innovative groups, everything from tracking biodiversity to trying to promote better health conditions, diagnose diseases. And so one of the things that's interesting about this technology is it, yes, it's under the control of these big mega corporations, but the applications and uses of it can actually be bottom up. And so there's lots of possibilities for this to be used for good, right? And there's even ways to leverage some of the sustainability commitments of these companies to push them to support that, right? To democratize it, to give access to it. There's also efforts by some different groups to also not share applications of this technology that they consider to be dangerous, which is also quite interesting, right? So let's say there's concerns about the ability for this to automate and author fake news. So there's been some attempts actually by the big companies to not have that become freely available, right? And so it's probably best thought of as kind of more of an interaction, bottom up, top down, and finding space in there for bottom up, including I would put universities in that space, right? There's lots there. And so one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost when I get super excited about my arguments in these books is, interestingly, I actually am quite an optimist about what's going on right now more generally in global environmental politics. And I would include AI in that, but my concern with AI right now is it's kind of under the radar, and most people are understanding it as just a magical technology that does good. And so I wanted to get people thinking critically about this technology. But one of the things is, I think, I don't have empirical evidence for this, and it's kind of but I think there's actually something starting to happen worldwide, a burbling uprising, partly in reaction to the climate emergency, partly in reaction to a youth and young people saying that we've been studying this global environmental crisis since kindergarten,
yes,
and it's time for the adults to act and do stuff, and they're going on strike, and they're pushing back. And so I'm kind of a strong supporter of Naomi Klein's argument. I don't know if you know her work. She's a Canadian author. She's written a recent book called On Fire. She talks about there's 3 fires burning right now in the world. There's One fire is the real fires that are just burning down the forest and burning down the world. Then there's the fires of some governments and many big companies. They're the arsonists that are lighting the fires. But then she has the good fire from below, and she sees this uprising around the world right now of grassroots activism and bottom-up pushback. And so I'm kind of with that. I think there's something happening. And part of that might grab the good parts of AI and make that help, right? But I also think it's very important to keep being critical, right? So that's why I keep being critical, because I think the uprising has to still, you know, I understand some concerns about Greta Thunberg and that why aren't other voices being heard? She's being heard so much. I get that. But at the same time, I admire her, right? She speaks her voice and she says things in a very hard-hitting way that's, you know, that we need to hear, right? And we need to hear it from a 16-year-old, right? That it's just, yes, it is just that simple. People need to start, you know, reducing the amount of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. It's just that simple, right? So I like that. So I feel optimistic about that. So that's kind of an answer to can we democratize? Is there a way for civil societies to grab hold of this? I think yes, right? There's lots of potential there. To another set of questions, one of the things I didn't say in my talk, but I thank you very much for highlighting it, is for me, you can't have sustainability without justice, and you can't have justice without sustainability. That they're absolutely inherently the same thing. And so one of the reasons I frame, for example, I have a whole chapter in this book on AI, which looks at the real and serious potential of AI to create new kinds of war. And for me, war is a terrible threat to sustainability, not just devastating ecosystems, but devastating societies and destroying human cultures that we need to be vibrant for sustainability, right? I have a whole chapter on the powerful ways governments are strategically cooperating with arms dealers to disseminate surveillance technologies to repressive regimes around the world. And those regimes are using that to monitor and target activists and are leading to these killings of activists that have become so common in some parts of the world, right? And so for me, again, it's a very critical sustainability issue that these terrible injustices are happening to indigenous communities, and that people are being forced off their land, and that there's extraordinarily unequal distributions of money happening in the world right now, right? With just the top 1% of the world having just a stunning amount of wealth, a new wealth creation. You know, the top 10 billionaires of the world will get more wealth creation in a single year than the bottom half of all the world's population. Insane, right? In a world where we're saying we don't have enough earth resources for everybody, why we let so much accumulate to the top, right? So for me, you have to have justice, and you have to always put that lens. And so one of the things that I tried to do when thinking through the prospects and limits of AI is to think about the times when it might promote justice. It might help small farmers. It might be good to have free apps, for example, and have the ability of farmers to quickly identify diseases, and have farmers be able to figure out who they might be able to sell their product to without middle actors taking off profits. And so there's lots of ways that at that at that small scale, lower scale level, I see lots of great opportunities for opportunities to promote the justice of farmers and promote the justice of communities and help protect. So thank you for that as well. Another set of questions. The planned obsolescence is a very, very critical part of what I see as the escalating crisis of overconsumption and wasteful consumption. I write a lot about that in Will Big Business Destroy Our Planet? I see an increasingly sophisticated set of marketing as well as just engineering techniques that are leading to very rapid replacement of everything, right? Including something as simple as our phones, our computers, But there's also a dramatic increase in the amount of everything that's being consumed. AI is very caught into this because, as I tried to point out, that AI has all the same corporate efforts to plan the obsolescence of the product pretty quickly, but it also has a very innovative group of people that are advancing this technology. So it's really seen a rapid increase in its power and ability around machine learning and deep learning in particular in the last 5 years alone. And as a result of that, the technology itself is just getting better. And so then replacing your products and upgrading, and it makes sense even sometimes in sustainability terms, because the newer one will be more efficient and will actually use less energy and will find ways to package your products using less paper, and will find a way to ship your product, using less oil, right, per product shipped, right? And so as a result of that, we're seeing quite a rapid series of replacements going on, which again causes that e-waste crisis, and again puts this added pressure on something like rare earth elements, right? For those of you who don't know, rare earth elements aren't actually that rare, but they're very difficult to process, and so that's where they get their name. But they're also extremely difficult to recycle. So basically every time we need these new elements, we have to go find new places to extract. And for a long time, China had control of the rare earth elements, but it's now diffusing worldwide. Cobalt, coltan as well. These things are not easy to recycle, et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, I kind of touched on everything. I did just want to say a comment about health more generally around sustainability, and my sense that people are actually absolutely central part of sustainability. One of the areas where AI is particularly powerful, in my opinion, and where I actually feel a lot less critical about it, is its ability to help individuals and community doctors diagnose diseases and provide medical support for poor people around the world. It is very, very good at predicting diseases and basically giving a best guess, the same way a doctor would, of what your disease is. But sometimes it's even better than you would get, particularly in a small community. But it also has the capacity to diffuse that to very remote villages, and especially help the local healthcare provider. So the way it works best is in cooperation, and so a healthcare provider has basically an AI-powered diagnostic tool that it can use to figure out diseases. The other area that it's very powerful is it can be a predictor and help contain the spread of things like Ebola and the Zika virus and things like that. And so there's lots of ways this technology can be good for human communities, particularly around getting better medical treatment worldwide. Did I answer everything, Leticia?
I think yes.
Well, thank you.
Another book.
No, another 3 books, Leticia.
Okay, I may translate some.
Okay, I would love you to translate my books. If anyone wants to translate my books into Spanish, I would be absolutely thrilled. What Leticia, did you mention, I wasn't sure, the Diego Rivera painting that I had on the shadows of consumption? Did you mention that to everybody?
No.
So I should say.
And I wonder why.
So I should say my 2008 book called The Shadows of Consumption, I had the extraordinary privilege of putting a Diego Rivera painting that's on the Bank of Mexico on the front cover, and I was able to get permissions to do that. I've never been able to get another permission to put another Diego Rivera, but I love his paintings, and it's what first got me an invitation to come to Mexico, so it was a tremendous thing. So for my future books, you translate them and then get Diego Rivera paintings on all of them.
Let's see other painters.
Oh, other painters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Francisco Toledo.
Oh, would he be good? Oh, good, okay.
So, well, I think we have had a busy morning, a very reflexive morning, a morning that gives a lot of things to think about and to imagine how what we should do next. here at UNAM in the postgraduate program of sustainability in our teaching, in the research we are doing, in the relations with society that UNAM and COAS are trying, through COAS, is trying to build. I mean, I'm very worried and very concerned. I take your point on trust and your generation. And it was, I think, perhaps the most terrible thing that Peter said about the risks of AI. It's the impacts on trust. I think our chances to, or a species developed by cooperation, because we're able to cooperate and communicate, and cooperation is based on trust, among other things, agency as well, of course, but I think cooperation, which is like a human potential, that's based in face recognition and other things, but I don't think machine, or perhaps they are able to cooperate as well. I think if we lost trust, we are demobilized as societies and individuals. So let's find ways to, I think, to protect our societies and communities from this challenge, and build trust by doing things together. Muchas gracias, Peter. Muchas gracias a todos. Y pues nos estamos viendo. Yo creo que ya cerramos el trabajo de la COAS, de los seminarios y del SUSMAI para este año. No, perdón, ya, Ayari. Y muchas gracias por su presencia de muchas veces.
Además, antes de que se vayan, el seminario que tenemos en la Coordinación Universitaria para la Sustentabilidad, Tópicos de Frontera en la Sustentabilidad, del que es parte esta conferencia, todavía no cierra. Tenemos una conferencia más del ¿tú te acuerdas las fechas? 25 de noviembre y 26 un taller, y el tema ya te lo dieron, va a ser sobre cambio climático y mares, y viene el profesor Dunbar de Stanford, me parece. Les vamos a pasar la información, pero solo para que tengan por ahí en cuenta que va a haber a finales de noviembre una última sesión de este seminario. Gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Perdón por dar mala información.